In the hallowed halls of Westridge University, where the elite convened to shape the minds of tomorrow, a storm was brewing. A sea of eyes turned towards Naomi Lawrence, the sole black student in Dr. Victor Hammond's advanced biochemistry class. Her heart pounded like a drum in the silent auditorium as the air thickened with unspoken tension. Perhaps you should consider a less demanding subject, Miss Lawrence. Near, why, dar. Hammond's voice sliced through the quiet, dripping with an arrogance that barely masked the venom beneath. Not everyone has the frame of mind to understand advanced biochemistry. The words struck like a whip, not just at Naomi's intellect, but at her very right to be there, her neck flushed with the heat of injustice. This was not the first time she had been publicly demeaned, but today the professor had crossed a line that was as invisible as it was sacred. The room held its breath, the silence a palpable entity, as some students let out nervous chuckles while others averted their gazes too uncomfortable to confront the scene unfolding before them. Answer the question, Miss Lawrence. Dr. Hammond pressed his voice a mix of impatience and mockery, adjusting his glasses with a flourish that seemed almost theatrical. Or would you prefer to admit that you're out of your depth? Naomi inhaled deeply, steadying herself. At 22, her journey to this esteemed institution was a tapestry woven with threads of scholarships and personal triumphs, her heritage a testament to resilience. The daughter of a cleaner and a bus driver, she had navigated a world that often underestimated her. What none in that room realized was the storm of intellect brewing behind those calm, calculating eyes. The CRISPR-Cas9 enzyme, she began, her voice a clear, resonant bell in the silence, acts like molecular scissors through a two-step biochemical mechanism. Her words flowed with the precision of a surgeon, each syllable deliberate and authoritative. First, it recognizes specific sequences in the target DNA using a complementary guide RNA. Her gaze was unwavering, piercing through the veil of doubt that had been cast upon her. Then the Cas9 causes a break in the DNA double strand, precisely as the discussion turned towards the ethical maze of gene editing. Dr. Hammond's frown deepened his expression, a mask of scholarly disdain. Naomi had answered correctly, yet he sensed the incompleteness in her response, the perfect opening for a more profound humiliation. Elementary Lawrence, we're so sorry, he thought. Any first-year student would grasp that. His smile took on a predatory edge as he leaned forward, eager to ensnare her further. Now, he said with a voice dripping with challenge, explain the ethical implications of the study by Wong et al. On gene editing in human embryos published in Volume 87 of Nature Biotechnology, page 834. His trap was set knowing well that this article, only briefly mentioned in passing weeks ago, was not part of the required reading. The room fell into a heavy silence, thick with anticipation of Naomi's inevitable stumble. But as she met Dr. Hammond's gaze with unflinching eyes, something shifted in the atmosphere. With a voice that grew in conviction, Naomi began to unravel the ethical tapestry of Wong's study. The research by Wong and colleagues, she declared, presents us with ethical dilemmas in three distinct areas. Her voice clear and unwavering, sliced through the tension. Firstly, it challenges the notion of informed consent, for how can an embryo consent to irreversible changes to its very essence? Her words hung in the air, poignant and thought-provoking. Secondly, it raises the specter of inequality. She continued, her gaze sweeping across the room, where access to genetic enhancements might birth a new form of societal division. The room seemed to lean in, hanging on her every word. And thirdly, Naomi's tone was now almost solemn, as the authors themselves state on page 837. It sets a precedent for modifications not for health, but for enhancement, potentially steering the course of human evolution in ways we can't foresee. Dr. Hammond's expression morphed from arrogance to incredulity. He tugged at his suddenly constricting tie. Correct, he admitted, his voice dry as dust, though I doubt you've captured the subtler nuances. Actually, Professor, Naomi's voice was steady, her composure unshaken. The article concludes by advocating for a balance between innovation and precaution through a global dialogue. Wong cites studies by Garcia and Patel, which argue that delaying gene therapies has its own ethical cost in human lives. Her words, rich with passion and insight, left no room for doubt or further challenge. In the hushed auditorium, a palpable tension hung in the air. Naomi, with a voice as clear as a bell, had just recited word for word not only the article mentioned, but also its intricate related studies. Dr. Hammond's complexion deepened to a fiery shade of crimson. How could she possibly know that? How could a seemingly ordinary student recall verbatim a scientific article that was merely mentioned in passing months ago? What this pompous professor and his esteemed colleagues failed to recognize was that Naomi Lawrence was anything but ordinary. Beneath her unassuming exterior, a mind of extraordinary prowess simmered, ready to transform this moment of public shaming into something far more profound. Imagine, dear reader, the scene: Dr. Hammond, his face a mask of disbelief, his fingers drumming a nervous staccato on the lectern, his narrowed eyes like those of a predator locked onto Naomi, trying to decipher her as if she were an unsolvable puzzle. "You seem to have a knack for memorizing articles," he sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "A useful skill, yet it's no substitute for true understanding. Let's test your critical thinking, shall we? Something that no amount of rote learning can replicate." Naomi felt the sting of his words, the underlying implication that she was merely a machine for memorization, devoid of genuine intellectual capacity. A whisper from a nearby student reached her, a warning, or perhaps a prophecy: "He won't stop until he embarrasses you." With a theatrical flourish, Dr. Hammond discarded his lesson plan, diving into an impromptu bioethical dilemma. "Consider this," he began, his voice now a blend of challenge and malice. "A remote community is afflicted with a rare genetic disease. The only cure involves experiments on their own children. What would you do?" The auditorium remained silent, the collective breath of the audience held in suspense as Naomi prepared to answer. What would unfold next in this duel of intellect and integrity? Would Dr. Hammond finally see the depth of Naomi's potential, or would his arrogance blind him to the truth? In the dimly lit lecture hall, the air was thick with tension, a palpable sense that something profound was unfolding. The question posed by Dr. Hammond was not just a test of knowledge, but a gauntlet thrown down challenging the very essence of ethical decision-making in science. Naomi Lawrence, a young researcher with fiery determination in her eyes, faced this challenge head-on. "Professor, your question frames the dilemma as a stark, unforgiving choice." Naomi began, her voice steady yet passionate. "But Harrington's model, as outlined in his 2019 seminal work, implores us to view these scenarios through a lens of nuanced approaches, not mere binary decisions." Her words resonated, carrying the weight of conviction and a deep understanding of ethical intricacies. She went on, her confidence blossoming like a flower in the sun. "To address such ethical conundrums, one must follow Harrington's three-tiered protocol. First, we must invest in educating and empowering the community. Second, establish a council where the community has substantial decision-making authority. And third, implement the treatment gradually with continuous monitoring, ensuring participants always have the right to withdraw." Dr. Hammond, visibly taken aback, attempted to interject, but Naomi's gentle interruption was firm and resolute. Page 47 of Harrington's article states, "The gravest ethical error is to presume that vulnerable populations are incapable of grasping complexities when given the right tools and time. Can we not see the wisdom in this?" A ripple of whispers and nods spread through the room, a testament to the impact of her words. Dr. Chen, leaning forward with keen interest, seemed to drink in every word. However, Dr. Hammond, now flushed with frustration, slammed his palm on the table. "This isn't a book club, Miss Lawrence. This is serious science." "Exactly, Professor," Naomi responded, her voice unwavering. "Which is why I referenced the established peer-reviewed methodology to navigate precisely this type of ethical quandary." Hammond's face turned a deeper shade of scarlet as he abruptly declared, "Class dismissed for today. Next week, I expect a comprehensive—" As the room cleared, Naomi's classmates gathered their belongings, their movements tinged with unease, casting fleeting, anxious glances her way. Among them, Zoe, with her curls bouncing energetically, approached Naomi in a hushed flurry. "He's livid," she whispered urgently. "I've never seen Hammond end a class like this before." "I'll be okay." Naomi responded, her voice steady as she carefully aligned her notes, each page a testament to her dedication. Zoe paused, her concern palpable. "Listen, we're all heading to Cafe Artemis after this. You should join us. We need to discuss everything that's happening." Naomi, touched by the unexpected warmth of the invitation, nodded in agreement. As Zoe retreated, Naomi caught sight of Dr. Chen making his way towards Hammond, his expression one of resolute determination. Once the classroom had emptied, Hammond slammed the door shut with a vehemence that echoed through the now silent space. "I'm not sure what you're playing at, Miss Lawrence, but let me make one thing perfectly clear." Hammond's voice was a menacing whisper slicing through the quiet. "I have spent 30 years cultivating my reputation here. I've sent students to Harvard, Stanford, Oxford. I've overseen more award-winning theses than you've had birthdays." He stepped closer, encroaching on her personal space. "I will not tolerate a transfer student with some parlor trick challenging my authority in my own classroom." Naomi, unflinching, met his gaze. "It's not a trick, Dr. Hammond. This is simply how my mind functions." "I know exactly how it works," he hissed back. "You've memorized a few articles thinking to impress, but let me enlighten you on how the real academic world functions. People like you might slip through with diversity policies, but true success requires more than just memorization and filling quotas." The venomous implication of his words lingered toxic in the air. Naomi felt a twist in her gut, yet she maintained her composure. She had been schooled her entire life in the art of concealing the sting of such words. Her final grade, she knew, hung precariously on the whims of Hammond's subjective judgment. "Isn't it just an assessment?" Professor Naomi inquired, her voice deliberately calm, a thin veil over the tempest brewing within. A sinister smile slithered across Hammond's face. "Precisely," he murmured, his eyes glinting with an unspoken challenge. "And believe me, I am well versed in the subtlest methods to ensure that problematic students find their true level. I suggest you ponder this before our next encounter." As Naomi exited the building 20 minutes later, the sky had begun its descent into darkness, mirroring the shadows that now clouded her thoughts. Her phone buzzed with Zoe's message, the exact address of Cafe Artemis glowing on the screen. Walking across campus, her mind that extraordinary double-edged sword had already strategized her next move. What Hammond hadn't anticipated was that by cornering her, he had unwittingly handed her the keys to something far more potent than a mere grade. He had revealed his hand, his letters. And Naomi, with her eidetic memory, capturing every word, every gesture, every inflection, now knew her adversary with unnerving precision. At Cafe Artemis, a group of students waited, their faces etched with anticipation. Among them was a young man. His audio recorder concealed a legacy of his internship at the campus newspaper. No one there could have guessed that the confrontation between Hammond and the unassuming transfer student was merely at its dawn, nor that the forthcoming days would irrevocably shift the power dynamics at the university. What would unfold when the professor learned that his veiled threats had been recorded? That the student he deemed inferior was poised not just to use her remarkable memory, but to deploy her entire arsenal of calculated brilliance against him. 1 week following their initial clash, the university amphitheater brimmed with eager attendees. Dr. Hammond's open masterclass had spread like wildfire, a rare opportunity for students across departments to witness the teachings of the celebrated professor. On stage, Hammond, with a self-satisfied air, adjusted the microphone, basking in the sight of the packed room. Behind the curtain of public appearances, a drama of a different kind was brewing. Naomi, with the ferocity of a scholar consumed by her quest, had spent the week immersed not just in the complexities of biochemistry, but in the very essence of Dr. Hammond himself. She delved into every published paper, dissected every interview, and scrutinized every thesis he had overseen. Her mind, sharp as a scalpel, cataloged each contradiction and inconsistency strewn across 30 years of academic work. In the dimly lit corners of Cafe Artemis, an alliance as unexpected as it was potent was forming. Zoe, the student with the wild curls, revealed herself as the editor of the university newspaper. Ryan Ever, with his tape recorder, was her steadfast assistant, and there by serendipity was Dr. Chun offering his quiet counsel. "Are you certain about this?" Zoe's voice trembled with concern as they neared the culmination of their plan. "Hammond's connections could crush your career before it even sprouts." "My career would be dead anyway," Naomi responded with a calm that belied the storm within. He made it abundantly clear that no brilliance on my part would suffice for his course. Now seated in the amphitheater's front row, Naomi exuded a serenity that was almost unsettling. Dr. Hammond's gaze flickered over her, his eyes narrowing in recognition before he launched into his lecture with his characteristic air of superiority. "Today we delve into the ethical boundaries of bioscience," he declared, his eyes skirting past Naomi. "Let's begin with my own contribution, the Hammond principle of ethical proportionality." Naomi's hand shot up, slicing through the air like a blade. Hammond paused, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. To ignore her now before an audience of hundreds would be too transparent. "Yes, Miss Lawrence," he conceded, his voice tinged with disdain. "Professor, before we proceed, could you perhaps clarify how this principle aligns with the opposing view you championed in the Journal of Bioethics in 2018? Her voice was laced with a challenge. A hush fell over the auditorium, the air thick with anticipation. Hammond blinked, confusion knitting his brows. "I'm afraid I don't understand your question. My work has maintained consistency throughout the decades." "Indeed," Naomi continued, her voice rising with a clarity that cut through the silence. "But how do you reconcile these contradictions? On page 142 of your article on ethical frontiers in genetic research, your words strike a dissonant chord, suggesting that cultural and socioeconomic considerations are mere shadows in the blinding light of scientific advancement. This stance, starkly at odds with the principle of proportionality you're poised to unveil, sends a ripple of murmurs through the auditorium. Hammond's face pales, his composure faltering. "You're twisting my words, taking them out of context." He protests, his voice a mix of irritation and panic. Naomi, ever the beacon of calm, offers, "I can quote the full context if you prefer." Her voice a soothing balm amidst the rising storm. She adds with a sharpness that cuts through the tension, "Just as I can quote the 7 other articles where you directly contradict your own ethical principles when it suits your corporate backers." The room buzzes with whispered exchanges as Dr. Chun observes with a calculating gaze, while Dean Blackwell, having just entered from the rear, frowns in disapproval. "That's completely inappropriate." Hammond pounds the pulpit, his voice echoing with authority and frustration. "This is a lecture, not a debate." Naomi rises, her stature growing in the silence. "I completely agree, Professor Hammond." She begins, her tone both respectful and resolute. "An academic lecture should uphold consistent and ethical ideas, not bend to the whims of funding." With a deliberate pause, she retrieves a thin folder from her bag. "I've compiled all your most blatant ethical contradictions from the last 15 years. She announces, the weight of her words hanging in the air, including, she adds with a significant pause, your demonstrably biased evaluations against students from minority groups. The auditorium falls into a profound silence, the kind that precedes a storm. Hammond, his face now a mask of fury, begins, "How dare you?" But his words are cut short as the side doors swing open. 3 members of the university's ethics committee, led by Dean Blackwell, enter. It was no coincidence. Naomi had sent her meticulously referenced compilation to them 3 days prior. "Dr. Hammond," Dean Blackwell's voice booms, resonating with an authority that demands attention. "I believe we need to talk." Hammond, now resembling a cornered beast, turns his furious gaze on Naomi. "You?" he hisses into the still-on microphone. Don't know who you're dealing with. Naomi advanced with a purposeful stride, her eyes locking onto the professor with an intensity that could not be ignored. On the contrary, professor, she declared, her voice steady and resolute. I know precisely who I am dealing with. You once boasted of your subtle methods to ensure that students like me find their true level. Her gaze shifted pointedly to Ryan, who with a slight nod raised the small tape recorder, its red light blinking like a silent witness. The blood drained from Professor Hammond's face, his own menacing words echoing back at him. From the rear of the auditorium, a solitary clap rang out, soon joined by others, until the room was engulfed in a roaring ovation. What was intended as a public shaming of a student had transformed into a spectacle of poetic justice, ignited by the very mind Hammond sought to suppress. As the dean, with a firm grip, escorted a visibly shaken Hammond from the stage, Naomi stood still, her demeanor composed yet aware of the tempest that was brewing. She had not merely challenged a professor, she had thrown down the gauntlet to an entire institution that had turned a blind eye to such misconduct for decades. Now the pivotal question lingered in the air: would Westridge University rally for truth and justice, or would it circle the wagons to shield one of its own? And what of the brilliant student who dared to unveil the hypocrisy of one of its most influential professors? 3 weeks following the dramatic showdown in the amphitheater, the Westridge University community was still grappling with the aftermath of what was now infamously known as the Hammond Affair. The Ethics Committee had concluded its inquiry, and the findings sent shockwaves through the academic landscape. Naomi, walking through the corridors of the science building, could sense the shift. Students once wary now acknowledged her with nods of respect. Professors, previously indifferent, now made a point to greet her. Naomi Zoe, her friend, dashed towards her, a copy of the university bulletin clutched in her hand, its headline screaming of change. The newspaper hit the stands with a bang, its front page screaming a headline that reverberated through the halls of academia: renowned professor removed after decades of systematic prejudice. The article, a testament to Naomi's relentless pursuit of justice, exposed a chilling pattern of discrimination by Professor Hammond against Black, Latino, and female students in his evaluations. The dean has initiated an independent review of all his grades over the last 5 years, Zoe shared as they made their way to the dean's office, her voice a mix of disbelief and hope. Dozens of former students are stepping into the light with their own harrowing tales. The university has made a bold move. Hammond wasn't just suspended, his tenure as a mentor had been stripped away. His office, once a fortress of academic influence, was now being emptied, its contents boxed away like relics of a bygone era. Inside the dean's office, Naomi was met with a panel of gravity. Blackwell, 3 members of the university council, and unexpectedly, Dr. Chun. Miss Lawrence, the dean began, his voice heavy with regret. I extend our deepest institutional apologies for the injustices you've endured. An envelope slid across the table toward her, a symbol of reparation. We offer you a full scholarship for the remainder of your degree and a secured spot in our doctoral program should you choose to continue with us. Dr. Chun leaned in, his eyes alight with admiration. And I'd be honored if you would join my research group. Your dissection of the contradictions in Hammond's work has showcased not just your remarkable memory, but a profound analytical prowess. Naomi accepted the documents with a calm demeanor, yet within her, a tempest of emotion swirled. Victory was hers, yet it was tinged with sorrow. The realization of how many before her had their aspirations crushed under the weight of prejudice, cloaked in academic judgment, was a bitter pill. Thank you, she managed, her voice steady, but her heart heavy. However, my primary concern remains with those students who came before me, whose dreams were sabotaged by discrimination masquerading as scholarly critique. Dean nodded solemnly, his face etched with the gravity of the moment. We are establishing a review committee, he announced, his voice resonant with determination. This committee will meticulously re-examine past cases, offering the possibility of academic redress. More crucial, however, is the introduction of a new blind evaluation protocol designed to eradicate any future bias. His gaze swept over the room, landing with an approving smile on Naomi, whose suggestion had sparked this transformative initiative. As Naomi stepped out of the administrative building, she was greeted by Ryan and a diverse array of students, their faces alight with newfound resolve. Among them were those she had barely recognized before, students who had been silenced, their voices now emboldened. "You've ignited a silent revolution," exclaimed a third-year Latina student, her voice trembling with emotion. "Hammond once told me I didn't possess the right kind of mind for advanced research." Now the truth behind his words is crystal clear. Naomi, curious, asked, "And where is Hammond now?" Ryan's smile was bright with satisfaction. "I hear he's frantically packing his office. 3 universities have rescinded his visiting professor offers after the news broke this afternoon in Cafe Artemis." The cafe, now bustling with students, had become a crucible for change. Zoe, standing on a chair, clapped her hands to capture the room's attention. "To Naomi Lawrence," she declared, raising her glass, "who taught us that knowledge isn't just power, it's justice." A thunderous applause filled the space, resonating with a newfound sense of unity. Naomi, usually reserved, felt a flush of warmth spread across her cheeks. There was something profoundly freeing about being truly seen, not merely for her intellectual prowess, but for her bravery. 3 months later, at a national bioethics conference, as Naomi concluded her presentation on systemic bias in medical research, a familiar figure approached her. It was Hammond, his once imperious demeanor replaced by a weary, defeated look. "You've ruined my career," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Naomi met his gaze with calm resolve. "No, professor," she replied, her voice steady. "You sealed your own fate the day you decided that some students deserve less, not because of their intellect, but because of their appearance." Her words hung in the air, a poignant reminder of the cost of prejudice. As Hammond's mouth opened to retort, it faltered, then closed, defeated by the simplicity of the truth. "Your own words and actions condemned you," she pressed on, her voice unwavering. "I only had the memory to remember them and the courage to repeat them." As Hammond shuffled away, his spirit crushed, Naomi experienced an epiphany. Her photographic memory was indeed a remarkable gift. Yet her true strength lay in her unwavering resolve to confront injustice, a quality beyond any IQ's measure. Naomi Lawrence's tale echoed far beyond Westridge, igniting a fire in the hearts of students nationwide, urging them to challenge long unquestioned systems. She had demonstrated that a single voice determined to speak truth to power can shake the very foundations of a flawed system. After all, the mightiest force isn't found in memorizing facts or boasting impressive credentials. It is found in the courage to stand against injustice when all others remain silent. For Naomi, this revelation was profound. Knowledge without courage is merely information. But when knowledge is imbued with moral purpose, it becomes a catalyst for change. If this narrative has stirred your soul and you believe in the transformative power of truth, share a story in the comments about someone underestimated who ultimately proved their worth. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Your support means the world to us. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire courage and challenge prejudice. Together, let's move towards a world where individuals like Naomi aren't forced to prove their value to earn respect. Remember, every shared story is a step closer to that vision.